going to share the screen. Now, as I have given you information regarding what we are supposed to do in this lecture, and that is going to be regarding classroom communication. And just going to share you the screen, and one by one I shall teach you each and every concept relating to that classroom communication. So this is going to be the next slide for you. All right. I think I've shared now what we have prepared for you in this lecture. So this is going to be regarding what is classroom communication and what are different barriers and what are the different major principles for the best kind of classroom communication. So we have to understand this terminology very clearly. Only then we can expect that we have the knowledge to answer this question in the examination. And I must tell you, we have gone through from number of things regarding communication. Like I have taught you regarding verbal, then non-verbal as well, in which we studied regarding body language, okay, then kinesics, and after that para language, space languages, and these things we have studied. But in particularly we have to study now classroom communication, and this is most important than all. Okay, verbal and non-verbal was very easy to understand, and this topic is also very easy to go through. Only merely 1 or 2 readings would suffice, but the thing is that this is very important than other topics in comparison, because verbal and non-verbal are not having that much probability of being asked, the probability in comparison to the topic from classroom communication. So this thing we have to understand and go through in today's specific lecture. I'm going to teach you what is this. So first of all, if I'm going to give you the definition of classroom communication, this is very simple. Okay, this is where there are 2 parties involved. The first is a sender and the second one is a receiver, and they can change at any time, change their position at any time. Majorly in classroom there is the one supreme party that is known as teacher. That in our case this is myself, and at the second place this is you. But sometime you also play the role of a sender and I play the role of a receiver. But there are 2 major parties involved in classroom communication, and these are teacher and student only. Now we move further and see what is there for us to learn in this specific lecture. So what is classroom communication? Classroom communication exists in 3 categories. There are 3 categories in which classroom communication can be held. Okay. So what are these 3 categories? All these 3 we have already understood. Okay. Verbal, then non-verbal, then a written. There can be 3 kinds of communication in the classroom. Verbal, when a teacher use the words and speak aloud. And it's not only the teacher, it can be the student as well, because I have already told you there are 2 roles to be performed in case of communication. First is the role of a sender and second is the role of a receiver. And it's not always possible that only teacher is playing the role of a sender. Student can also play the role of a sender, and teacher can also play the role of a receiver. So in case of verbal communication, any party can speak aloud with the use of words. So this is verbal communication in classroom. In the case of non-verbal communication, when body language is used for expressing your concerns or ideas. And in case of written communication, there is in communication in a written, when words are written in a printed form, okay, to specific audience, such as a report card or your books, notebooks, your notes, or anything, or your assignments. So all these considered to be the written communication. So I have taught you that classroom communication can be held in 3 ways. The first is verbal, second non-verbal, and finally this is written communication. And then next is I shall tell you how this happens, how the classroom communication happens. Okay. So the first way for making the classroom communication happen is teacher class communication. So the first way of how the classroom communication can be done or can be held. This is teacher class classroom. Here what exists? Here communication exists when a teacher communicates. Here the sender is teacher only. So there is sender, there are receiver. Sender is a teacher only and receiver is the whole class. Whole class. Okay, so that kind of communication is known as a teacher centric or a teacher class communication. So in this communication, teacher communicates with his entire class. Like I am communicating with you right now. It can be in any way, like verbal communication when he uses some words. For example, if a teacher asks the students to stop talking, this is a kind of verbal communication that was very easy to understand. So what basically in this slide was there for you, the only thing that the first way of how classroom communication can be held, this is the teacher class communication or a teacher centric communication in which a teacher is only the sender. Then the next is the teacher student communication, in which again there are two parties involved. The first one is sender, second one is the receiver. But the sender is a teacher only again, but the receiver is only particular student, not the whole class, but one student only. Okay, so that is called the second way of classroom communication. This is known as a teacher student or teacher student centric communication. So in this way, communication occurs when teacher interacts directly with a particular student. Since a teacher entrusts with her students mostly in front of a whole class, it can be difficult to distinguish between teacher-student communication from teacher-class communication. The only difference is when a teacher announces or talks to whole of the class, this is known as teacher-class communication. When he talks to only one or particular student, this is known as a teacher-student communication. So that was the second way of how the classroom communication is held. The third is student-teacher communication. Again, there are two parties. The first is a sender and the second one is a receiver. Here, the sender is not the teacher, but the student. Okay. So this is known as the student-centric communication, and in which receiver is always the teacher. So student-teacher communication is also direct communication between a student and the teacher. This is the time it is students who initiates the conversation. So when you are talking to me, then in this classroom, that shall be known as a student-teacher communication or student-centric communication. So I have taught you the three ways of how the classroom communication is held. The fourth way is student-student communication. So here again, there are two parties, the sender and receiver. Okay, the sender is the one student. This can be any student, like student A, like Navneet can interact with Indu ma'am or anyone else. Or receiver is also the another student, and none kind of involvement of a teacher is there in this specific kind of communication. So this is known as a student-student communication. So student-student communication occurs when two or more students interact with one another. So this is said that successful whole class discussion stimulate this kind of communication, that is known as student and student communication. So that was the fourth kind of communication held in the classroom. Then the fifth one is student class communication. Student class communication. So where so do you have experienced while your undergraduation and post graduation that sometimes that you had to present to whole of the class, like you had to make some kind of a presentations on any specific topic, and you had to show or you had to present your views to whole of the class. So that kind of a communication where there is only one sender, and that is a student, and the listener or the receiver is whole of the class. So that kind of a communication is known as student class communication. So that exists when a student or a group of students direct their messages to entire class. So when the whole class is addressed by a single student, this is known as student class communication. So now I think you have got the idea of how the classroom communication exists and happens. There are only 5 ways. The first was teacher class, the second teacher student, then student teacher, then student student, and finally it was student class communication. So now we move further, and this is going to be the next topic, and this is regarding principles of effective communication. I told you while we were talking about the different principles or components of effective communication, I told you that I shall teach you regarding different C's. C's. Okay, so there are 7 C's which are necessary for having an effective kind of a communication. So in this particular slides from now onwards, we shall be understanding about all these, and next we shall talk about 4S as well. These are also the principles of effective communication. So first of all, one by one, I shall tell you what are different 7 C's for effective communication, and I must tell you these are very important to go through from exam point of view. So one by one, I am just going to tell you what are these principles. Okay. So when your communication is clear, you are able to convey your message more precisely. So there are 7 C's which you have to understand for effective communication. So the first C is concise. Your ideas or your message should be very concise. Should be very concise. That means that should be precise as well. It should be shortest. So what you wish to say, you are not supposed to exaggerate the things. You are just supposed to say in a limited words the effective message. So being concise means being able to convey your message in a shortest possible words. So when you speak little, but message more. So that kind of a system is known as concise system of communication, and it must be there. So that was the first C. The second one is clear. You must have clarity of your message. If you are not clear of what you are going to tell to anyone or to your receiver, then you cannot communicate anything. Okay. So clear or clarity is very important in business communication. You must tell only specific message which are very clear to you. If you yourself are not cleared with the ideas of what should be communicated, then you cannot communicate anything. So you are able to emphasize specific message on at that time if you are clear with your messages. So that was the second C of effective communication. The third is correct. You must message correct, or you must be correct with your ideas or opinion, what you are going to communicate. Okay, so that should be very correct. The understanding of your audience is directly proportional to correctness of your ideas. If your ideas, your message, whatever you wish to deliver, that is very correct to you. If you are very correct, if you have correctness of ideas and thoughts, only then you can deliver the right kind of communication or message. So that was the third C for effective communication. The fourth one is concrete. You have to be very clear and very particular of what you say. You suppose you are about to talk of a job A only. You are not supposed to make different kind of stories and then just start about different jobs, and then you are coming to job A and you are talking for job A only for 30 or 40 seconds and nothing more than that. So that should not be the system of your communication. You must be very concrete. You must be very clear and particular of what you say. You should say only what should be said. Okay, what should be said, or what is necessary to be said. So it is the fourth one which tells you that your ideas must be very concrete. Okay, there must not be any kind of fuzziness or any kind of a different system by which you are not clear. Then completeness or complete, this is the next principle or next C, which tells your message or your idea should be complete in itself. If you are complete with your ideas, only then you can go. Okay, the half message is always a very dangerous message. Okay, half knowledge, half message, half ideas, half thoughts are always very dangerous. So you must be complete with what you say. Okay, a message or idea is complete when the audience has everything that they want to be informed. You must inform to the audience regarding each and everything about the message you wish to communicate. So it should be complete in all the forms. Okay, only then this gives an authority to them to move to call of action. So this was that. Then the sixth one, I think this is courteous. You must be very courteous. Courteous, just you have to show respect to your receiver. If you respect to your receiver, then they shall have a confidence in listening to you. Otherwise, they shall not listen to you properly. This is just a courtesy, is the respect that we show to others in business communication. Also, it means the same thing. You should show respect to readers by having courteous communication. So if you have a courtesy in you, only then you can communicate well and others can understand you well, what you wish to teach them or what you wish to communicate to them. That was courteousness. I think this is the last one. This is coherent. Coherent means your message should be very much coherent or logical. Logical and important one. Don't tell the illogical or unimportant things to your audience. Otherwise, they shall never listen you. Only one or two times they shall listen you. After that, they shall leave you. So the message that you send should be logical, and that is why coherent is communication is very important. The message involves certain idea, thoughts, and thus when they are coherent, then only they are able to convey the main idea of message. So it is said that they should be very clear, very logical in all the aspects. So I think I have given you all the information regarding what are the different principles of effective communication, which are categorized in different C's. Okay, so these C's we have to go through or we have to understand. So it was all regarding that. So when we are moving further, then we can get to know that what are there for us now. So we have gone through from these one by one. If I'm telling you all these again, then these are just like concise, clear, correct, concrete, complete, courteous, and coherent. Okay, so these are the things which you have to understand and go through. And I hope you would have understood. That was not very difficult to comprehend, but these are very easy to understand. So now we have to move to the further next topic. This is going to be related to 4S. Okay, like there were 7 C's, there are 4 S as well, and these are also considered to be the principles of effective communication. Okay, so you must have the knowledge of these as well. So one by one, I'm just going to show you what is there in these, and we shall understand these completely. So these are 4 S. So what are these? The first is shortness. Shortness is always in equality with what we have studied under concise. That was under 7 C's. So this is under 4S. So shortness is you must have the short words and greater impact. Just your words should be limited, but their impact should be greater. This is known as shortness. Your idea or message should be very brief. Brevity is a soul of wit, it is said. The same can be said about communication. If a message can be made brief, verbosity did away with them, then transmission and comprehension becomes very fast and effective. So this is why it is said that the message should be made as shortest as possible. This was the first S. The 7th, this is simplicity. The message should be very simple. You should use the kind of words which are very simple to be understood. Only then you can clearly reveal your ideas and thinking process. So simplicity both in usage of words and ideas reveal clarity in thinking process. So it is normally a tendency that when an individual is himself confused, that he tries to use equally confusing strategies, like he tries to use some words which are not able to be which the receiver is not able to understand. So your use of words, your ideas should be very clear and simple. The third, this is strength. This is strength of your message. Your message shall have the great strength. Okay, it should have greater impact, and it should have a credibility. Only then the receiver can, only then there can be influence on the mind of the receiver if there is strength in your message. So whatever you communicate, you have to deliver this with complete strength. The strength of a message emanates from credibility of a sender. If a sender himself believe in a message, there is bound to be strength and conviction in whatever is tried to state or say. So it is said that message should have great strength so that the credibility of the sender can be got, and the receiver can easily understand everything said to him. I think this one is the last. This is sincerity. This should be sincerity. You would remember that at the seventh point of a seven C's, I taught you about the courtesy. Courtesy. Okay, so this is also that you should have a very sincere approach. You should be very genuine. You should be very respectful in what you do with the receiver. Okay, a sincere approach to an issue is clearly evident to receiver. If sender is a genuine, it will be reflected in how he communicates. Okay, there should be sincerity, there should be respect, there should be courtesy or generosity. So all these things are necessary for having an effective kind of a communication. So we taught about 4S, which are generally the principles of communication, and we have understood about all these things clearly. So now I hope you would have got the complete idea of what we did in this lecture till now. So first we studied regarding classroom communication. Okay, so I taught you how the classroom communication can made happen. So the first way was teacher class communication, second teacher student communication, the third was student teacher communication, then student student communication, then there was student class communication. So after that we studied regarding different C's. These were concise, clear, correct, concrete, complete, courteous, and coherent. After that, we studied regarding four S, which are also considered to be the principles of effective communication. And these were shortness, simplicity, strength, and sincerity. And this is the final topic now, and that is going to be barriers of the classroom communication. I shall tell you which things pose barrier in kind of a classroom communication, how barriers are made. So if there is a classroom communication, what are the different problems which are faced by that kind of communication? So these problems are ultimately known as the barriers of classroom communication, which we are going to study in these 2 or 3 slides, I think. So the first one is verbalism, use of words. Sometimes a teacher uses some kind of words which are not understandable by the student, because it's not the one student sitting in the classroom. There can be any number. Like I have experienced that in the initial days of my career. I used to take classes of more than 80 plus students, strength of students as well. So in that you can never get to know, and we were assigned the lecture for only 40 minutes, and if we genuinely feel that 40 minutes are very lesser for handling those many students, so you cannot give attention to whole of the class. So there can be number of barriers, like verbalism can be there. This is just the use of words or the spoken ability of the teacher when this is not being understandable by the students. The second one is anxiety. There can be the anxiety in the students. They can feel hurriedness. They can feel anxious, or they cannot feel well at a specific situation, and that also make the barrier in the communication. If they feel anxious, we have experienced number of time in our classroom that students feel anxious, then they shall not listen to the teacher. Then a language barrier can be sometime our accent is different. Suppose we are taking the class for South Indian students. Their accent is completely different for speaking English. Our accent is completely different. Although I'm able to teach for different classes to different students from all over the India, but still language is the barrier, because sometime while replying to the student in WhatsApp, I usually use the only word G in final. Okay, so that in India or in northern India, that basically means yes or okay. That can means yes, or that can means okay, or that can also mean all right. Okay, so these are the last words which I use while communicating with anyone via WhatsApp. But South Indian people do not understand this word. They feel that there can be something. Number of students have asked me that why do you write G after the message. So that just mean these things as far as the northern India's system is concerned. So then there is expression. Teacher can express in the way in which he feels comfortable, but maybe that expression is not being comprehended or understood by the student. So that also makes the barrier in the classroom communication. Then there is a reference confusion. Okay, reference confusion. That is just when a teacher try to give some examples, and the teacher is trying to give example from one point of view, but the student is understanding this example from different point of view. So that is called reference confusion, when examples are not being understood by the student completely. So this is also the barrier of the classroom communication. Then daydreaming. This is a kind of a student's habit. Nowadays, students, what do they do? Sitting in the classroom, they just dream about what they are going to be in future, what they are going to do right now, what they are going to do after this class is over. They are just thinking about something else other than what is being taught in the classroom right now. This is known as a daydreaming, and that is also the barrier of classroom communication. Then imperceptions, taking teacher in the way in which you want them to understand. Okay, so this is imperceptions, when teacher is trying to teach something else, but the students are not getting that completely, and they wish to understand from their own point of view only. Okay, so when teacher teaches something else but the students are interested in something else, or they just impercept simply means when he is teaching something else but you are perceiving that he is teaching something else. Okay, teacher is teaching A but you are imagining about B. So that is called the barrier of the barrier in the classroom communication, when you are not able to recognize what is being taught to you. Then disinterest. If the student is disinterested in the classroom, he shall never listen the teacher. This is also the barrier. Physical discomfort. If the benches are not well, if he is not able to sit properly in the classroom, sitting is not available right, then it shall not make his mind to learn. Okay, he shall never learn. Then he shall not try to learn, he shall just try to skip the classroom. So this is also the kind of barrier in the classroom communication. Now there are some other barriers. Okay, major barriers we have gone through. These are the final ones, I think. The first is a distance barrier, when teacher is standing at a lot of difference with the students. This is also a barrier. Then lack of a common experience. If the teacher is not having the common experience of how to handle the students, that shall also create the barrier in communication. Language barrier we have understood completely. Then gender barrier, if there is gender barrier, sometime the women students or girls are not able to express their ideas to their teacher who is of opposite gender, and vice versa. So this is also the situation prevalent in India, that also poses the barriers in the classroom communication. Lack of credibility, when you do not trust your teacher, when you feel that he is not going to make any kind of difference or any kind of a teaching way. This is also known as a barrier of classroom communication. And finally, there is age factor. If teacher is highly aged, like he is in his middle 50s, then you shall not be very friendly to him. Or if he is of somewhat of your age, like us, like of 30 or 30 plus, 25 plus, then you shall be able to communicate with him very friendly. So in this way, in this complete lecture, we have taught you regarding different kind of communications in classroom. After that, we studied regarding the principles of classrooms, which are known as 7 C's. After that, we have studied regarding the 4 S, and finally, we did regarding the barriers of the classroom communication, which were important to go through. So I hope you would have got the idea of what was there all in that. So you have to understand all these things, and only then you can able to clear this concept. And I must tell you, this is very important from exam point of view. The reason why we have taken this specific lecture today, and that can be the possibility in future as well. The only reason is that today there will be I think 3 or 4 lectures. The next lecture are going to be relating to the paper second. And so this is why it can be the case, because if we do not start at 5 p.m., maybe we have to take the classes after 8 p.m. as well. And this is not, so number of students were requesting us. So this is not the possibility for taking the lecture that after that longer period. So I hope you would have got the complete idea of what was there for you in this specific lecture. So just going to tell you that you have to attend the next lecture, that is going to be regarding paper second, and that shall be held at 6 p.m. exactly. The topic is going to be regarding personality and perception. We shall be talking about these in detail in different lectures. This is why we are going to take different lectures for these. I hope you would have got the complete idea. Thank you so much for joining me in this lecture.